Hi guys, my name is Arin and this is Arin's Voice. Today we're going to be talking to Representative Johanna López of the Democratic Party about issues related to students. Thank you and I hope you enjoy. Hi guys, today we're here with Representative Johanna López of the Democratic Party to talk about issues related to students. Thank you and I hope you enjoy. Hello Representative López, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. Are you ready for the first question?
I'm gonna try. Let's see.
Okay. So, the first question I want to ask you about is one that I think is extremely important to parents and students alike: gun violence. The news of school shootings sends a wave of fear throughout parents and students. So, what do you believe we need to do about this issue?
Number one, we have to be very vocal in Tallahassee. I think that every single time we have bills that are filed just trying to reduce the age to have a firearm, or maybe be more flexible in getting firearm without permits, without background checks. I think that we have to be on top of that. We have to follow up every bill that is filing related to firearms, so we can send emails to our legislators so we can be there and speak up, and also talk to our legislators that are representing us, and let them know that you do not agree and the reasons why you do not agree on that type of bills. And also, I think that educating our communities, by providing data, for example, what happened when we don't have certain safety measures or procedures to acquire a firearm, or the consequences of getting a firearm. I think that is extremely important, to not only to educate our parents, but also our children also needs to. And I think that this is not a political issue. I think that we have to be clear that this is a community issue, this is a safety issue, and that our parents and our children needs to be safe away from firearms, and having discussions about ways of being more safe in our school system without putting firearms in teachers or putting firearms in minors in our communities. I think that the conversation is needed, and I highly appreciate all the groups that are going to Tallahassee every year looking for those bills to stop them to keep passing through committees, so we don't have it in the floor and at the end as a law.
I understand. Now, the next issue I want to ask you about is the teacher shortage. Now, as I know, you have served as a teacher before, so I understand this issue must be very important to you. According to the Annenberg Institute at Brown University, there's close to 36,000 vacant positions in public schools. What do you think we need to do to solve this?
Number one is the stereotype on the teaching position. I think that teachers are the most important professionals that we have in the nation, and even in the world. I think that the teachers shape all the other professions in the world. Our teachers shape doctors, engineers, and we have to respect them by giving them the right salary. And I think that not only salary, but also exemptions when they want to buy a house, for example. Affordable housing is also another challenge that our teachers are having right now here in Orange County Public Schools. They need to, they work in a certain school, but they have to live 1 hour away so they can afford the rent or afford the house that they buy. And it's sad. I think that we have to work on that. Also work in exemptions in other things, like maybe a car. Let's reward our teachers. Let's giving them, a way of saving money so they can stay in these professions. Even when we talk about the salary, we also have to think about the health insurance. For example, I remember when I started as a teacher, because my ex-husband also work in OCPS, we have our insurance free, not only for me, but for him and also for my children. And I was a mother of 4 children. So that's a great help. You're saving money by that, by helping the family of the teachers. So, providing certain options, when you hire the teacher, an incentive, when they're coaches. For example, we pass a bill to help coaches that they can have a strong salary when they are part of our system. And so most of the time our coaches are teachers. I was a coach for volleyball and for weightlifting. And I remember that when I add the numbers, I say, okay, so I'm getting for this season of volleyball 1,000 and maybe 200. It's not even 1 cent an hour because I did preseason, on season, after season camp, and I just do it because I really want to see my team doing great. I want to help my students to maintain that opportunity to participate in the sport while they're in school. So I think that there's a lot of incentives that we can provide for teachers if they stayed in school. Most of our teachers stayed after school because they're working every hour of the day, so they don't have enough time to correct, to review all the papers on all the assignments of the students. So let's give them also, a way of incentivize when they're working at home, even with the school, work. So I think that there's a lot of ways to help them economically so they can stay in those profession. And that's a way of us saying we respect the best profession in our nation.
Yeah, I understand. Now, the next question I want to ask you about is the student debt, like loan crisis. So, it's been found by the Education Data Initiative that the United States has close to $1.777 trillion worth of student debt, coming from close to 43 million people. Also, Florida's average borrower has at least 39K in debt. What do you think we have to do to solve this?
So with the student loan, that is this is extremely important because most of the time, we don't have any type of help for our students when they graduated. And here in the state of Florida, the cost of living is not aligned with the salaries that we're receiving. So most of the time, people, let's talk about teachers again, having a student loan debt plus not a good salary. So we ended in having our teachers homeless, or maybe living in a way that they don't deserve after they studied so hard. I know that we have an initiative at a national level for teachers, so they can if they have a loan, a student debt, they can they can, the system pay for that. But I don't see that in other professions. I think that if we have this in other states, I don't understand why we're facing a lot of challenges in the state of Florida. I think that we can create an allocation for government positions or positions that we know are not getting a good salary or a salary aligned with the cost of living, so we can help them through an allocation or grant. This is something that we can also work with nonprofit. For example, let's say we have secretaries that have a debt of that. So if we work with a nonprofit that maybe they're trying to help secretaries to be more stable or to have a better lifestyle, maybe they can request a grant or provide at a state level, or maybe an allocation at a federal level. There's maybe a wrap-up service to help all of these professionals that finish their degree. They did a lot of sacrifices. And how can we help them so they can be more successful when they finish their education. I think that we can be more helpful at the state level if we be more flexible with the grant that we provide here. I forgot the name. Oh my goodness. We have a grant. I forgot the name. I was talking about that. Bright Future. Thank you so much. So for me, initiatives like Bright Future that are so important. Thank you so much. That are so important. Sometimes it's only for a very specific group of students with a high GPA, getting all of these great test results. And I think that we need to be more flexible, not everything is related to academics. We also have to think about community hours. We also have to think about personalities, how sensitive and how good is the student with his peers. There's so many other qualities in a human being, and we only focus in these test results and these grades. When we have students that get very anxious during the test, and even though they're extremely smart, they never pass the test. So what are the options for these students? Are we providing maybe projects, or maybe sometimes we have these studies or research papers, so we can provide at least scholarships through the year, so they can we can help them in not having that huge debt in the post-secondary education. I think that we have to be more creative and more innovative and in how to support not only the students that are doing great in the school system, but also the students that have the potential to be successful. I think that sometimes, we have great students. They just need self-esteem. How can we lift that student to feel welcome, to feel value, and see all of our students have something to offer. We cannot expect straight A students so they can, or this high GPA. We don't know what they're going through, and I think that is extremely important that we pay attention to other qualities in our students so they can get economical opportunities in the post-secondary education, and they don't have to end with this huge debt at the end.
I understand. Now, the next thing I want to ask you about is the literacy issue going on in America. According to the National Literacy Institute, 21% of American adults are illiterate, while 54% have a below sixth grade reading level. So, how do we solve this?
Most of the time, we offer different opportunities for our students in the school system. And I think that we are not offering the same opportunity for the parents. Sometimes we expected all of these accomplishments with our students, but sometimes we're not aware of the education of those parents. And I think that we can provide, even in our schools, these opportunities to parents. For example, helping the parents to get GED if they didn't finish the high school diploma. How can we pay and help them to get GED so they can have the high school diploma, and they will be more able to help their children in elementary school, in middle school, even in high school, and if we provide this environment in the school system, if they have siblings, if they have other children, and they don't have to be concerned in, okay, what I cannot take this, training or this opportunity because I don't have anybody to take care of my children. But if you're in the school and we create this environment of other teachers, and then an incentive for the teacher, and we're going to have the children of these parents that are here in our school, so we can help the parents to get the GED. I think literacy is something that we don't speak a lot about it. It is extremely sad when I visit the several times, the juvenile detention center, and even the jails, and the literacy in these institutions is extremely high. When we have students in the juvenile detention center, most of the time they end up in jail at the end, and sometimes, the house where they had been raised, and the family members, they have the same challenges, and become a cycle. And how can we approach that? And I think that community, most of the time when we see our community centers are in areas that we have the most vulnerable communities, that most of the times are also the communities that need more help in literacy, and I think that those spaces can also be used to provide free literacy opportunities through grants, through local grants, with the commission, with the city. And people, most of the time don't speak about that. They think that this is something that is naturally developed, and sometimes we can even have students in the school system, but because they have a computer since kindergarten, most of the time they don't know how to write, so writing is also important, and we have, it's part of literacy. I think that we need to go a little bit, analyzing our past, and, even though we have to embrace all of these advancements of technology and be appreciative of having that, I think that we also have to value the traditional ways of writing, of reading a book with your children, to your grandmother that maybe is starting having dementia, and she needs that person close to her, needs to hear. And I think that we have to continue to value and practice the good memories of our past as well, so we can help in other ways all of this sad data about the lack of literacy here in the United States. I think that we can do more, and I think that is a great idea, even to go and talk to clubs to see how can they provide these community hours. This is another way, of providing community hours. Just go to hospice, and teach and read and try to write, and engage the students with also with the elderly. When we talk about literacy, we can also talk about how to use a computer. Most of the time our grandparents, they don't know how to use the computer, not even the smartphone. Maybe that type of interaction with our new generation, I know will be productive, and both of them I'm gonna learn from each other.
Mhm. I understand. Now, what advice would you give to students interested in public service?
Be yourself and be engaged. I strongly believe that our youth, our young generations, they're very, very engaged in the environment, in issues that are very, very close and very related to politics, and I think that having conversation with elected officials, and also, but also not only with elected officials, but also with the supervisor of election office, and also be part of debate clubs. There's certain things that are going to help our students to also being engaged. Read the news, be updated. Try, because and it's okay to have uncomfortable conversations about issues that are happening. Don't take anything personal. I think it's another advice. Try to have a conversation, even though you don't believe in what you're hearing, but try to interact with a person that the expertise is in. Let's say you believe in public education, and you have somebody that said, no, I don't believe in public education, so try to have that conversation so they can, interact in a way that they can say, this is the positive aspects and those are the negative aspects. I think the comparison and being engaged help you to grow intellectually. And it's not the same when you read from a book than when you go to Tallahassee, than when you go and visit your mayor, at a local race, And now we have ways of being on the floor through the internet. You can see us on the floor when we are having debates around certain bills, or talking during committees. You can participate virtually or in person in Tallahassee. You can go to the floor, you can be recognized in the floor, you went to my office, and we take pictures of you in my seat, so you can have that experience and say, you know what, this is something that I can do definitely. I have these ideas, and try to learn, how to file a bill. It's not that hard. Is identify a problem or a loophole in the law, and what are the options that you see in your mind, as a visionary of this, in during this time. So I think that is being and be yourself, being engaged, visit the Florida House or the Senate virtually or in person, or your local government. Send emails, and being updated. I think that, it's extremely important that that we are just humans like you, and that you can be, one day you can be in our seats, you can be the governor, the president of the United States.
I understand. Now, finally, I have to ask you, what is your favorite sport to watch?
Oh my God. I used to love watch volleyball, and when I was in Puerto Rico, and more than nothing, like that's my number one sport because I play volleyball for so many years. But when my daughter, my oldest daughter, started soccer, I fall in love with soccer, because it was like very engaging, Look at her, running after that ball, it was like I felt my heart feel a different way. And I really enjoy, watching soccer, interesting. But yes, but yeah, I think that number one was volleyball. Then my mind changed when I came here to the United States, when I saw my daughter playing soccer. And I think that part of our culture here in the United States, we watch the football games because everybody's watching football games. I think not because I enjoy it, but maybe it's the time to engage with family, friends, connecting, and talking while we're watching, and eating. I think that's something like culturally I think I acquired that because I'm living here in the United States.
Yeah. Well, that concludes our interview. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your patience. And I am so sure that you will achieve all your dreams. I believe in you. You're extremely smart, and I know that you will achieve whatever you want to achieve intellectually and professionally. And I know that you will help others to do the same. And I'm very thankful and honored to have this interview with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you also. And that concludes our interview, guys. Thanks for watching.
Also, if you enjoyed the video, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. If you have any thoughts, please feel free to comment down below. Thank you.